What if one of history's greatest spiritual teachers never wanted you to search for God? Because in his view, God was never lost. For more than 800 years, the words of Jalal ad-Din Muhammad Rumi have crossed religions, cultures, and languages. His poems are quoted everywhere, from universities to meditation retreats. But very few people understand the astonishing discovery that transformed his entire life. And here's the surprising part. Rumi wasn't always the ecstatic poet people imagine today. He began as a respected scholar, devoted to religious law and theology. Then one mysterious encounter shattered everything he believed he knew. What happened between Rumi and a wandering mystic named Shams of Tabriz would forever change how he understood God, and perhaps how we should understand God today. But his greatest discovery wasn't that God exists. It was something far more unsettling. To understand Rumi's discovery, we first need to meet the man before the legend. Rumi was born in 1207 in Balkh, located in present-day Afghanistan, during an era of enormous political upheaval. As the Mongol invasion spread across Central Asia, his family migrated westward before eventually settling in Konya, in what is now Turkey. By adulthood, Rumi had become one of the region's most respected Islamic scholars. He taught the Quran, interpreted Islamic law, and delivered sermons attended by students from across the region. Everything about his life suggested certainty. He possessed knowledge, he possessed status, he possessed answers, or so everyone believed. Yet history suggests that beneath this respected exterior, another question remained unanswered. Could knowledge alone bring someone closer to God? Rumi was about to discover an answer that no book had prepared him for. Around 1244, a wandering dervish named Shams of Tabriz entered Konya.
Historical accounts differ on the exact details of their first meeting. Some traditions describe Shams asking Rumi a shocking question: who is greater, the Prophet Muhammad or Bayezid Bastami?
Others preserve different conversations. The exact words remain uncertain, but nearly every historical source agrees on one fact. That meeting completely transformed Rumi. The respected professor gradually abandoned his comfortable public life and immersed himself in long conversations with Shams. Students became confused, friends became jealous. Many believed Shams had bewitched him. Yet something remarkable had happened. Shams didn't simply teach Rumi new information. He forced him to experience what books could never fully explain. And this leads to Rumi's first great insight. God cannot be reduced to ideas. For Rumi, theology remained important. He never rejected Islam or abandoned its foundations. Instead, he insisted that intellectual understanding alone was incomplete. Imagine reading hundreds of books about fire. You could memorize its chemistry, its temperature, its color, its behavior. But until you feel warmth on your own skin, you haven't truly known fire. Rumi believed humanity often treats God the same way. We collect definitions, arguments, doctrines, yet the living experience remains distant. Again and again, his poetry urges readers to move beyond merely talking about the divine and toward directly experiencing love, compassion, humility, and remembrance. But what exactly did he mean by experience? The answer becomes even more surprising. Many people imagine God as distant, a ruler somewhere beyond the stars, waiting to be found after enough effort. Rumi challenged this assumption. Drawing from the Quran and centuries of Islamic mystical tradition, he repeatedly suggested that separation from God is often an illusion created by the restless human ego. One of his most famous ideas can be summarized simply: the obstacle isn't God's absence, it's our distraction. We spend our lives chasing possessions, recognition, control, endless thoughts. Meanwhile, the divine presence remains closer than we realize. This echoes Quranic teachings describing God as nearer than one's own life breath. For Rumi, spiritual practice wasn't about bringing God closer. It was about removing everything that prevents us from noticing what has always been present. And this changes the entire direction of the search. Instead of asking, "Where is God?" Rumi invites us to ask, "What is preventing me from seeing?" Here is where Rumi is often misunderstood. Modern culture frequently treats his poetry as romantic inspiration. But historically, Rumi's writings describe something much deeper. For him, love wasn't merely emotion, it was transformation. Real love dissolves arrogance. It softens fear. It loosens attachment to the false image we constantly defend. This is why his poems repeatedly describe being broken open, not because suffering is desirable, but because moments of loss often crack the shell of the ego. Only then can deeper compassion emerge. In this sense, love becomes a spiritual discipline, not sentimental, not passive, but profoundly demanding. Which raises another question. If love changes us, what exactly is being transformed? Perhaps Rumi's most revolutionary insight concerns identity itself. He observed that much of human suffering comes from clinging to a fixed, isolated sense of me, my success, my reputation, my fears, my story. This constant self-focus creates separation from others, from nature, and ultimately from God. Islamic mystics often describe this process as softening or emptying the ego, not destroying personality but releasing excessive attachment to it. Rumi expressed this through unforgettable images. The drop returning to the ocean, the reed flute longing for the reed bed from which it came, the mirror polished until it reflects light clearly. These are not historical claims about literal events. They are poetic metaphors pointing toward inner transformation. The more transparent the ego becomes, the more compassion naturally appears. And perhaps this explains why Rumi's message still resonates centuries later. Today's world offers more information than any previous generation could imagine. Yet anxiety, loneliness, and distraction remain widespread. Rumi would probably recognize this immediately. His solution was never to accumulate endless knowledge. Instead, he invited people to cultivate presence, to listen more deeply, to notice beauty, to practice kindness, to remember what truly matters beneath constant mental noise. His writings continue to inspire Muslims, as well as readers from many other backgrounds, though interpretations vary and should be understood within the context of his Islamic faith and the broader Sufi tradition. His enduring appeal may come from this balance. He remained deeply rooted in his religious tradition while speaking about universal human experiences of longing, love, and transformation. So, what did Rumi discover about God that changes everything? Not that God lives somewhere beyond reach. Not that more arguments produce greater faith. Not even that perfect knowledge guarantees wisdom. Instead, he suggested something astonishing. The deepest barrier between ourselves and the divine is often the illusion of separation itself. When pride softens, when distraction quiets, when compassion grows, the search begins to look very different. Perhaps, Rumi would say, we were never trying to cross an impossible distance. Perhaps we were simply learning to notice a reality that had been quietly present all along. And maybe that's why, after more than 8 centuries, his words continue to invite each new generation into the same timeless question. If the divine has always been near, what today is keeping us from seeing it?